Hello everybody, this is Bison Crumbs, and welcome to my channel. Now this is a bit of a belated video, but for the first one on my channel, I feel it's a necessary one. So what I'm going to do is split this video into two halves. The first half is going to be a review of my financial situation up until this point, and how I managed to end up in the little bit of debt that it shows up here. And then the second part will be my March 1st reset slash first paycheck of March 2023 budgeting video. So we're going to do both those today and see where we go from there. Now, currently, this is a belated video because I am recording this in mid-April, and April is famously not in the month of March. So why am I doing this? The reasoning is threefold technically. But one, I do desire to finally hold myself accountable to my budget and curb my spending habits. I think planning and vocalizing that plan will be good to keep myself accountable. Another reason would be that I've been watching a lot of Budget With Me videos since the beginning of this year, and either A, they have stopped posting since the beginning of this year, or B, I look at their monthly amounts and it tends to be a lot higher than my income. So I kind of want to see where a lower income takes you. And so lastly, the reason why I am picking March to begin is because I managed to pay off all my credit cards to zero and not buy anything that whole last week of February, which makes everything but the city double cash to be zero. For my city double cash, we'll get to it, but I ended up having some late fees add up and the interest, and it ended up being that when I paid it off, the interest didn't accrue yet, and I ended up overpaying them, and so they gave me 73 cents back, which isn't a whole lot, but it's something. But now to begin, we should start with a little bit about myself and then work through that history I talked about. So I am now a 27-year-old who lives in Omaha, Nebraska, making about $15.30 an hour, which is pretty decent for the area. But I do have health and dental insurance for me and my wife, which in part is the reason why I feel like I'm slowly digging myself into a bigger hole of debt. But in any case, I should talk a little bit about the software I'm also using. I'm using the zero-based budgeting software of YNAB, or You Need a Budget. And a zero-based budget just means that for every dollar or penny that you put into any of your accounts over here, those add up to your budget, and they all have to be accounted for either short or long-term future goals depending on the need of the money. So if you want to think about it like this, YNAB discourages you from having a savings account, which isn't to say you cannot have one, but it is more asking yourself the question, what is this money you're putting into the savings account being saved for? Like everyone, I like when that number goes up and up, but I know for at least me, whenever I have to dip into that savings, I get a little sad because it feels like I'm stealing from myself for something, but I can never figure out what it is. However, if you were putting that money in savings with a job, like if $1,000 is being saved for unexpected expenses and 2,000 is being saved for a planned vacation or something of that like, then when you dip into that savings, you know that it had a job, and if you overspend in emergency spending, like say you spend $1,500, you know where that extra $500 is being reassigned to. So it'd be taking $500 from your vacation fund for that emergency in particular. So in that regard, it's more of a realistic look at your accountability for yourself, and that you are making a judgment call based on your knowledge at the time and where it is coming from and if it's worth it to you. I know for me, early this year, I had tickets go on sale for two concerts I've been excited to go to, but I didn't expect them to both pop up in the same month, but I did expect them to sell out pretty fast. So when I was jumping in and buying the tickets, I did have to realize that I was taking some of that extra money I hadn't saved for concerts. out of other categories to fund that. And it's the judgment call of taking money from like groceries, gas, going out money, and moving them into what you really want and making a judgment call of, is this concert worth taking $20 out of going out money? It'd be like one less time of going out. And if it is, then you do it and you can feel okay about it. And you can always remake that money up if you get extra money during the month or what have you. It's just realizing at that moment where you're taking it from and prioritizing your goals. That basic mentality that YNAB tries to promote, and the mentality that has helped me be more realistic with the money that I have and where I plan on making it go. I really like to see the bigger picture of my financial journey and guide myself to where I think will be better for me at the very least. With all that said, some more about the history of what I have gone through since starting this financial journey back in 2013. So we'll go December. All right, so starting in 2013, I started a part-time job with a movie theater. I was working a lot of weekends and nights, but I split my paycheck 50-50. 50% was going in savings, 50% just in checkings, but I really didn't spend a whole lot of money because I was still in high school. But it's a slow building of just wealth here for the most part. I had no credit cards or anything at this point. So then when we increased it to 2014, I was looking to graduate in May, which is where this dip comes in. So in May of 2014, I graduated from high school and had a full ride to college except for paying for books. But then I also managed to get in a car accident with my mother's vehicle that was on loan to me. So everyone ended up okay in that accident, but it did cause a significant dent in my debts. And I'm extremely lucky, but I was able to get my dad's car, and then I paid him $5,000 up front with graduation money since I did not need it as much. And then over time, I was supposed to pay off the other 5,000, which I did end up doing. But it just took a little bit of time balancing between college and work. So now we go to 2015 as well. So it's a little bit of just building. And by this time, I did have a credit card since I was in college. So some of this debt isn't just the car, but for the most part, I'm still building wealth and things are going okay. I believe it stays like that for a couple of years here where I'm just building wealth like that. So this is throughout my college career. I'm mainly just saving money. I end up graduating from college with an associate's degree and just working more and more at my part-time job. So then by 2018, I managed to hit almost $16,000 before I began dipping lower than my normal. And so 2018 was really when it started for me to go downhill. So to begin, in I believe April of 2018, I switched my 50-50 split at the theater to a 70-30 split, only 30% going into savings. This is because I felt I had always saved too much money and I deserved more fun money. I had been saving for 5 years at this point, most of my money. And living with my parents, I didn't have rent or anything that I had to immediately buy. And by this time, I had paid off my car completely. So it was just all going into savings, and I didn't feel like it was necessary for my growth. And that's when the other troubles began. So in late 2018, I hadn't gone to the dentist in quite some time. So while I was still able to claim insurance through my parents, I began going to the dentist. And because I had been gone for so long, I had a lot of work that needed to be done. And by the end of December, I had spent $1,000 out of pocket just on the dentist. And that's outside of all the insurance money that was covered. And that's where I began to decline even more. So come 2019 is when this big swoop begins to happen. So this big swoop begins downwards from a trend. And that is because I continued to go to this dentist, and it was a new dentist I had to go to since my old one retired. That's part of the reason why I didn't go to the dentist as much, is because I didn't want to go through the effort of finding a new dentist. But I ended up with a major chain dentist office, and everyone was real nice, but I started spending a lot out of pocket throughout this next year. And it didn't really hit me that I might have been being run for my money more than I thought I was, because I was beginning to make all these decisions by myself. I thought I was making smart decisions. It wasn't until April here that you can see that I managed to actually hit my credit limit on my credit card and realized that I was spending too much over what insurance covered, and that I was not in a good financial place. So the receptionists and dentists were nice. They let me hold off for a day while I was able to fix that. It was just like a payment that hadn't gone through quite yet, but it was a real wake-up call. By this point, my mother knew I had been going to the dentist a lot, but didn't know how much. So she ended up paying me back $2,000 because I told her that's about what I had spent. I did not have the heart to tell her that that was not all of it. By April of 2019, when I stopped going to the dentist, I had spent $7,105 at the dentist just on tooth work. And I'm not quite sure if all of it was actually necessary, but I still don't have the heart to tell her that amount. And that's kind of where the shame of money comes in. When you start making bad decisions, you can really get into your own head. Well, I didn't keep track of my finances up to this point, or not well at least. I knew I was spending a decent amount, but I was taking out a savings, which that's kind of what savings is for those expenses, the dentist and stuff. I just didn't realize how fast I was actually draining that cash reserve that I had, which got me into trouble. So make sure to go to the dentist more. And you don't always have to trust everything your dentist says at face value. You can always take a step back and do a judgment call if you actually need that work done immediately, later, or at all. I know a couple of the teeth I got done were just, I know one was very superficial. It wasn't affecting anything. At least my last dentist had said it had never affected me, but I hadn't realized what I agreed to when they put a cap over it to quote unquote fix it. So it's more about realizing some of the procedures might be unnecessary stuff. Also, 100 of those dollars were spent on a new electric toothbrush through them, and I would say probably don't do that. If you need an electric toothbrush because they are better, buy one yourself online. I knew that back then. I still decided to buy it there and then. That was kind of dumb. Barely used it. Starting to use it more. Keep on your teeth. But sad stuff aside, I bounced up and down for a while in 2019 here. I was starting to build back up a little bit here. So 2020, which was a big one and a fun one for everyone. Um, so by the end of 2019, I had begun really binging a lot of financial content to see what I can do better, what I should be focusing on, and just trying to get better personal finance in general down. But when I began actually going through it, I ended up finding YNAB because I realized that the Google documents I was keeping track of all my transactions through, it wasn't working the way I wanted it to. And that's why I ended up actually finding YNAB, was because switching between accounts with my money, between checkings and savings and all my transactions in general, keeping track of them, I was just having a hard time keeping up. It became more of an expense tracker than an actual budget. And that's why I didn't really realize how much money I had been spending and how quickly my savings was being drained from me, is because I was just having a bank sheet basically of transactions that was only telling me money's going out, but you still have money. That's when I found YNAB, was the beginning of 2020. and I began using that service. And so you can see I was kind of going up. December tends to be a bigger month for me just because I tend to spend a lot, and that's getting me in trouble in the future here. But March 2020, I was actually laid off from my theater job. I was lucky in the regard that I believe my theater company caught it kind of early, where they took the pandemic seriously, and by mid-March, they had laid off all their staff. For a lot of the people that worked a lot of shifts, they actually managed to pay them the hours they had worked so far, the hours finishing up that pay period, because it's on a 2-week basis. So they calculated how many hours they thought I would work and gave me that plus the regular pay that I had already worked. And then they actually finished up March by using that same calculation and doing another 2-week period of pay for us as well, or at least me. I know some of my other coworkers who did not work as many hours as I did not end up getting it, so I'm not quite sure how that was distributed. But that gave us time to apply for unemployment, and back then, unemployment came with a bonus pay, which really helps for my sake, but it put me at $644 per week, which is about $16.10 per hour if you're working a 40-hour week. And that was more money than I was ever used to getting. Looking it up, my supervisor job at the movie theater paid $11 by 2020, which is pretty crazy since I started at $7.25 back in 2013 before they began bumping that minimum wage up in Nebraska. Over the course of a couple years, minimum wage was set at $9 by 2016, and that was the biggest pay raises I ever got at the theater was those mandatory minimum wage increases. The supervisor position only gave us a quarter extra, so that was cool. And we actually just voted for it to be raised to $15 by 2026. Yeah. So over the course of a couple of years, it raises 150 each year, and that's where Nebraska's going. So by August of 2020, Nebraska was actually one of the first states to cut that pandemic pay, dropping the weekly amount to $134 a week for me, or $3.35 an hour. And for that money, I should say, you did have to constantly be applying for jobs throughout that unemployment time to actually receive the pay. So I was constantly looking for jobs even through the pandemic. Nebraska's rules on it were a little interesting. You had to do 3 applications per week to continue to be qualified for the unemployment pay. And looking for jobs during the pandemic was not a very fun experience, to say for sure. But I ended up never getting calls back from any of them. A lot of companies were still downsizing even if they had jobs up and available. So by August, that pay was cut back, and I managed to actually find a job at the end of August, which is a company I've been working for 2.5 years now. But as you can see, the second month I got into a lot more debt again, and that was because my dad's car he had gave me and I had paid off finally died. It was a 2005 Grand Prix, and I just hadn't drove it enough apparently. Those cars need a lot more mileage on them than I was giving it in the city. And so I went out and bought a used Ford Escape and put myself into another 10K of debt. The other debt is just that credit card debt that revolves monthly. But I ended up with a new vehicle, and I was also lucky on that part because I was able to find a newer used car before they had a huge amount of shortages around Omaha. So I was pretty lucky there. I've been, there's a whole lot of luck in this, honestly, and I'm eternally grateful for all of it. But I did drop a whole lot. December, I spent a lot on gifting for the holidays, especially since I was in a low spot mentally. I felt like giving, I feel like giving helps me, even if it doesn't help me financially. I just like to give a lot, and that's a problem I have to plan for. So we moved to 2021, and I continued to go in more and more debt. In May of 2021, I actually got married to my fiance. She's the love of my life, but we ended up starting to rent an apartment together now that she had graduated from college and had a more stable job. So in May of 2021, we get married, we get an apartment, and that's kind of where this debt ends up stockpiling. It's just because rent is expensive and it's harder to save for everything. I'm not quite sure why it's so high in debt in 2021, but I end up going pretty in debt. I am able to like pay for my monthly rent and stuff, but it starts getting harder to make ends meet on my side because we've added all these expenses with like groceries and rent and utilities, everything added together. I just start going heavy into this debt, which a lot of it is still the car, but that brings us to today, which in January I decided to make a bigger leap and I sold off all the stocks from my dividend taxable account. I had made this account during the pandemic and I had invested pretty heavily into it. So selling that off was a pretty big deal to me, and why I've held off on going any further than March for starting this channel is because by January I had sold off all my stocks, and February, as I said, I had paid off all my credit cards. So March really is this full reset for me that I am trying to do. So we're back here and we begin. So to begin, we're going to match all these numbers for our credit cards with these accounts over here. I keep them in the same order just for my own sake. But Chase is saying we have $97 more than we should. So we're going to minus that, which puts us at a $0 payment for what we owe, which matches that. And then for City Cash, we do have that 73 cents of overpayment. So we have to account for that and put that there. Now, we're still in a little bit of debt here. So we're going to look down here and see if anything else is off for our budget yet. There's the two Roths that are starting. I put $140 in here just because that has to match these two Alliance. I am doing a few things all at once just because I am very disorganized, but I'm in the process of bank churning both of these Alliant accounts for a credit union. So I need to account for that being set aside, and those need to stay there to actually redeem the specials for it. If you don't know what bank churning is, it's just going through different banks and going through the requirements to meet the bonuses, and then canceling those accounts and moving to different banks. Usually it's a little bit more complicated. They make a lot of hoops and hurdles for you to go through to actually qualify. And part of the qualifications for this one is to keep that money in there. So we got to keep that money in there. 140 puts us at those two combined. These are my general savings accounts, which I'm going to try not to touch for now. Those as well. I'm planning to save up for another wedding just because ours was very small for 2021. We didn't get a whole lot of our family in just because we have people high at risk, and we've known other people who have had family pass away with these kinds of events. So we kept ours very small, just parents, grandparents, immediate family, and very close. And then I'm starting to save for another honeymoon. We technically took a small honeymoon, but she doesn't really want to count it as the honeymoon since it was a kind of a weird one. And maybe I'll talk about that again sometime. But I think for all these different categories, we'll be keeping them for now, but a lot of these are dead categories. Maybe in the next video, I'll start cutting some of these out because I do want to get more organized on that front as well. I don't know how many of these I actually need to keep, but We get to the bottom, and I do know that I need to add some money into these. I don't know how much I need to add into those. All right, so that's all we have for major issues right away. So we've got 1976 still in debt, and I'm going to take it out of my 2022 Roth. Whew. I don't know if I'll actually be able to put any money towards 2022, so I think I'm a little bit too late for actually spending any of this money. I believe the last day for taxes is this coming Tuesday. I will be probably just taking any of the extra money for my Roth 2022 and applying it towards this year's current Roth IRA. If, but I, but I am unsure if I will end up having enough money either way. We'll see if I'll be able to start saving for this next year's or not. Or if I know another YNABer who posts on YouTube here, I believe it was Gabby, said that she was only going to do half the amount that you're able to contribute to. So that might be a good idea for me as well. I might just do half for next year, or at least make it a more reasonable goal of, if not full, then a little bit less. But we'll see. So now that we're back down to zero, this should be as real as it gets, and we are going to cut. And we cut to my first paycheck. So my first paycheck in March, I ended up with $870.29. And there's a few things I have to do at the very beginning here. So with my first paycheck, I have to pay my half of the rent for the month. So that's $448. The internet is $36 at the same time. Electricity, I only need half that for my half. So I'll change that actually. About $26. And then home gas is also another half, so I'll just do $9 there. And we'll see if those get changed over time. Since it says average spent $17, so I should be okay. $25.61. Yeah. So it kind of calculates. A good part about YNAB is that if you have a bit of history with the systems, it begins to show you averages versus what you assigned last month, in case that's a little bit different. So it's a pretty useful function in that regard. And the last thing is on the 3rd, I give $35 to my parents for my phone plan. I have a paid off phone, I just have to pay for that part. And now comes the problem. My problem is I have a cat on me, so I can't go get the receipt that tells me all my numbers. All right, and so we're gonna jump around a little bit. Maybe I should just wait. We're waiting. And so to continue, so for the phone, $35, we're gonna start saving for YNAB again. So for YNAB, it's $16.50 a month, which well worth it in my opinion, but I know some other people have disagreements on that one. Car insurance is an easy one. We'll put 82 cents towards that. Car insurance, we do have to start spending on this one. We'll come back to him. I know this one's bigger for me. All right, so then gas is the next most important thing. We're gonna put $55 towards that. Groceries, We'll put $72 towards groceries, untouchables, all of that. We're gonna start saving towards my anniversary, so that'll be $30 there. For actually doing this video, I was gonna put 50 towards that. Then down here, we got a meal roundup. Every time I use my debit card for Yada, which is an online baking service, any of the change is rounded up and sent for meals. And that's something I like to do charity as well, even if it's just a little bit here and there. I do more charity. It's just this one's more passive for me. So we're left with $80, and I wanted to put some of this towards honeymoon and wedding. I at least wanted 25 in wedding, and I was going to put at least 25 in here. This is also through Yada, where there's some saving streaks if you put at least $25. I plan on putting more in, probably honeymoon, than $25 per month, but it is a good start for just that sort of thing. And I'll probably show Yada off on this channel eventually here soon. I want to kind of go through those numbers and see what they add up to, kind of thing. So I did gas, I did groceries. I think this is the only thing I have left then, where I've got to put 31.48. And that's really all there is to it this time. I believe that's where I want the money to go right now. Important things first. Everything up here is in the first 5 days, really, of the month. I have no credit cards to worry about at this moment, which that's a pretty good feeling, actually. But I believe that's it. So other than that, this has been a bison's journey of making crumbs on the prairie. Thank you all. Like, sub, and comment what moments have made you reflect on your finances. And I'll be back soon with check 2. I'll catch you later.